I speak with people around the world and investors around the world and developers. They all focus their attention on the guy that's going to make money for them, which is the bank or the lender, etc. Change that. So I want to talk to entrepreneurs and tell them, focus on the problem. You solve these problems that have plagued us for decades, the money's going to come. But stop building and prioritizing those guys, the companies. Focus on the genuine.
Hello, and welcome to a brand new episode of Engatica's interview series. I'm your host, Nimalika, and we are really glad to have you today. Today, we have on the show Kaveer Beharee, founder of an award-winning blockchain AI startup, Ubiquity AI, which identifies leading and insurance customers in distress, automates payment arrangements on the spot, and provides frictionless service. Welcome to the show, Kaveer.
Nimalika, hi. I'm super excited to be here, as I told you before this thing started recording. So I'm all yours. Shoot. You've got some good ideas, some tough questions. Go for it.
Yes, I'm very excited to have this conversation with you. So before we start the questions, the Engatica interview series is a powerhouse of insights from industry experts and influencers from around the world, a platform that provides the latest news on AI, automation, and technologies that will help you grow your business. Join us, be a part of our community, learn, share, and grow with us. Okay, Kaveer. So let me start off by asking the main question. You founded Ubiquity AI, which is an award-winning AI blockchain tech startup. So can you tell us what Ubiquity AI does and what are the key challenges that you solve?
I did not start out as an AI or blockchain entrepreneur. In fact, if I looked at my life plan, this was never even in my universe. The reality is the deeper you go into problems, the better the understanding you get about how those problems emanate. And if you look at the world's two biggest problems, it doesn't matter what industry, I'm talking about society, the world, our population. One is healthcare, right? And despite all the innovation you see in the world today, more people are getting preventable diseases. So you need to ask yourself, is our investment going into the right thing, right? A quick example, in the year 2000, there were 150 million people worldwide, or about 100 million people worldwide with type 2 diabetes. By 2050, that number is going to be 750 million people. Those are people that are going to suffer from a preventable disease. And the associated social cost, medical cost to those individuals, it's difficult to quantify. But the more fundamental question is, with everything, with all the resources we are putting into solving problems, how is it that this problem called preventable disease is overrunning all our efforts? And it's the same with financial issues. How is it from 1950 to today, the average middle class in most developed nations is now poorer? In 1950, a welder could build a house, have a wife, school 3 kids, and they'd be fine. By 1970 and 1980, his wife had to work. Today, that same family will most definitely be funding their lifestyle through debt. Again, how is that progress? So when we look at technology, it's easy to solve a company's problem. We need to make money. This is our target market. That's their problem. Let's just go for it and do it. But I think that I kind of stumbled upon innovation as a way to address a problem that I've been focusing on for the last 20 years, which is distressed financial consumers. So I've been working with insurance companies and lenders in looking at ways to manage and mitigate default risk and rehabilitate consumers. Because what happens in the world today is that you miss your credit card payment, you lose your job, they blacklist you, they send you over to a debt collector, and that relationship is broken permanently, right? Whereas I may have lost my job, may have been furloughed, maybe in financial stress. I've still got my degrees. I'm still employable. Help me get on my feet, and I'm going to be even more loyal as a customer moving forward. The fact is that those technologies and that approach doesn't exist. In a nutshell, we've developed a technology that predicts if a person's financial position is likely to change and before they actually default, try and automate a rearranged payment agreement, meaning that if you're paying $1,000 or 10,000 rupees on your installment this month, let's see, we can, negotiate an automated settlement of, let's just say, half that amount or a quarter until you're back on your feet. So AI is the most effective and the cheapest way to communicate with customers today. There's no doubt about it. The blockchain helps us transact more cost effectively than just about any other method there is. Sending a message over blockchain is even cheaper than sending a message over email. More efficient, more effective, more secure. So it kind of makes sense for us to start looking at these problems within a technology paradigm. And we started doing that about 5 or 6 years ago. And it seems like a good idea. As you said, we are an award-winning company. We're still in development, but every bit of technology we've developed is brilliant. And we've attracted some of the world's best experts. Everyone says they're, I'm talking about eminent global experts that have not only joined the team, but have also become early investors as well. So obviously the problem is big enough and exciting enough to tackle. The technology approach is easy. Big enough to bite into, and some very brilliant people are committed to addressing these problems. So that's what we do at Ubiquity, day in, day out, trying to solve these existential problems using AI and blockchain.
Yeah, so as amazing that sounds. So can you tell us more about what decentralized finance is? So, like you started talking about finance.
Yes. So Ubiquity, we are not a DeFi company, or we're not a token company or any of that. Let me just put a bit of historical context. If you look at the biggest leaps in society over history, it always centered around one innovation: communication. More specifically, how do we make the world a smaller place? I mean, when ships, where blue ocean ships were invented, trade expanded. When you got the telegraph, the telephone, railway lines, the internet, and now social media, all those major leaps that have transformed society were all communication related. And they all did one thing: they made the world smaller, more effective, and more cost effective to communicate with somebody around the world or in another city, etc.
Correct.
There's a lot of hype around blockchain. And we can talk about money and the history of money and the importance of blockchain in that respect. But that's not our business. Our business is that we've recognized the potential of the blockchain to dramatically enhance and reduce the cost of communication. I think the most powerful application of blockchain will not actually be transacting. I think it will fundamentally change the way we exchange information. I'll just give you a quick, simple example. You want to open a bank account, and then you want to open a different bank account for some other reason. Now you've got to go and give both banks copies of your identity document or passport, right? Whether you like it or not, otherwise you're not going to open your account. And my question is, do I feel happy having a photocopied copy of my passport sitting in some office for some compliance, checklist? And the answer is no, I don't want that. I don't want my critical documents sitting with service providers all over the place. What I do see, however, is a future where you and I walk with our blockchain wallets, and if Bank A or Bank B wants your passport, your marriage certificate, proof of address, you send him a hash link with that document, but you're in control of your data. That's the future I kind of see. And I mean, it's a simple, it is kind of simple to kind of see that, right? But I can tell you right now that there are banks in Europe where there's strong regulation that are collaborating to simplify know your customer, your KYC documents. They're collaborating over a blockchain. And I mean, that is transformative. It eases transactions. It eases cross-border transactions. And it's tangible. So we see the blockchain as a tool for something much greater than merely financially transacting and decentralizing finance.
Yeah. So what you spoke about having links sent over. So like as a technical person, I find it difficult. So how do you think blockchain can go across people and we can teach people what blockchain is and how that technology works?
Let me
How
ask
do
you
you
something.
think? Yeah.
Okay, hold that thought. But you asked me a very good question. How does your internal combustion engine in your car work? I'm sure you drive to work or you drive in the weekends. Explain how that internal combustion engine works. Do you know?
I will not be able to.
Do 99.9% of people driving cars actually know that?
No.
They don't, right? But
No.
why do they take the leap and decide, I want to drive a car? Because car makers sold them the benefit of driving a car rather than hauling ass on the back of a horse, right?
Yes.
And they understand it.
Yes.
And that's where I think the blockchain community needs to spend a lot more time in articulating a value proposition that is meaningful to a potential market. So while we focus on selling the technology and how brilliant the technology is, I don't think people really care about that. People want to see the benefit. They want to see privacy. They want to see money saving. They want to see increased utility. They want to see a tangible benefit to their lives of adopting these new types of technologies. So it doesn't matter whether a person knows how a blockchain works. What matters is that he understands that it's secure. It enables him to do all kinds of things like transact, communicate, facilitate all kinds of things in a different kind of environment. And we need to explain why that environment is better for him as opposed to the status quo. That's all it is. It's not a complicated problem to understand. I'm not saying the solution is not complicated, but the problem is an easy problem. But I don't think we spend enough time focusing on really understanding the problem around blockchain. It's not explaining it in a nutshell.
Yes. So if we now move towards lending systems.
Yeah.
So there are traditional lending systems, and now we're moving towards blockchain and decentralized finance. So how do you think governments can regulate such transactions?
You know, I absolutely love this issue because you touched a little bit about DeFi, decentralized finance, for those that don't understand. And in its most fundamental terms, decentralized finance is creating decentralized points of access to financial instruments for everybody. So today, I think it's important for us to explain that if you want access to a bank account or money or a loan or whatever, you need to go to some regulated institution, sign an agreement. And I mean, we kind of all understand that, right? There's huge problems with that system. And let me just give you one example. If there's an incredible company like Ubiquity that's about to go and list on the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, right? I'm going to go and get a corporate broker and advisors and JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs who's going to underwrite the paper. And what are they going to do? They're going to give the opportunity first dibs to all their customers, right? The only time a normal person would have access to that opportunity is once we go public. By then, the people in the know, the inner circle, would have already made a 10x, 20x, 100x return before this investment opportunity even sees the market. Where's the equality in that system? I don't think there is equality in that system, right? So for me, the fundamental opportunity of decentralized finance is democratizing access to services and opportunities. Because now, Ubiquity may not have to go and list on the New York Stock Exchange. We could do an ICO where a token represents some portion of the underlying asset being my company. And we could list that on a retail exchange, and everybody, you, me, anybody with an account could now get access to this investment opportunity on the ground floor, right? And I mean, the same kind of applies to loans and funding, etc. So I'm in contact with some very, very smart people in Africa that are looking at DeFi tokens to open investment opportunities to retailers in mining. So Africa sits on the massive copper mines. I mean, there's a global shortage of copper. We sit, with the biggest, on the biggest mountain of resources in the world. And we're beholden to institutional investors from developed markets, which is actually not great because they kind of dictate the terms, and you as the guy that's digging up the ground simply has to accept those terms, right?
Okay.
One of the big problems that we've seen with DeFi in recent months in the last 2 years is that there have been a couple of failures because they have the same problem as real money. It's fiat, meaning the value is intrinsically determined by my trust in its value. There's no fundamental value. It's fiat currency. There's no gold standard. It's like the dollar. What determines the value of the dollar? Nothing. Since 1971, Nixon removed the gold standard for the dollar, which pegged the value of the dollar to gold, the price of gold. And he said, no, we can't do that anymore because America couldn't fulfill its obligations to other countries around the world. And said, no, we're just going to remove that. So now the trust in the value of the dollar is intrinsically based on trust, not on anything else. And it's very similar for tokens that don't have actual utility. And we've seen that there's been failures of DeFis and stable coins for, I think, the same reason. There's fundamentally nothing backing those assets. Like Terra, it was an algorithmic peg to the dollar, an artificial peg. I question if they actually had physical dollars out there for every representing a token, whether Terra would have been okay. But what I do know is that the opportunity for DeFi is via ICOs, where a token represents a metal in the ground or a piece of an asset in a company, and we transact on that basis. I do believe there's a bright future. But like any new technology, you're going to have to shake the sieve, and the good stuff will ultimately fall to the bottom.
Yeah.
But we're still in the process of shaking the sieve, so don't be too despondent about it just yet. There's a lot of noise. There's going to be a lot of failure in blockchain in those markets. But ultimately, the technology is sound. The principles need to be established. And to your question about the regulation, I have absolutely zero confidence that regulation today is going to improve anything, for the simple reason. It's innovators that push the boundaries and necessitates a reactive response from regulators. The regulation is always behind, always. You look at the financial crisis. I mean, the property crisis in 2008, 2009. I mean, it essentially was the consequence of exotic financial instruments like collateralized debt obligations that are extremely difficult to regulate because a regulator simply doesn't know how the thing works. And I mean, up until today, those instruments and more evolved versions of those instruments exist right now. So the propensity for a similar type of disaster still exists. And we don't understand those old instruments. How does one expect a regulator to try and understand the blockchain, which is arguably infinitely more complex in technical terms?
Yes.
However, there is light at the end of the tunnel. The reason that we are launching out of Europe is for one reason and one reason only. Europe has got the most robust blockchain regulations in place right now. And what that has done is that it's given financial services providers like banks the kind of regulatory certainty and comfort to go out and experiment and innovate, but in a kind of controlled, safe environment, right? We're not saying the regulations are perfect, but it gives us an operating parameter. And as a new company, we prefer that guidance, as opposed to just launching in the wild, wild west and hoping for the best. Because if we make a big mistake, we could fundamentally destroy the opportunity. So I would rather We play in the playpen where everybody's watching us, where we have our fun. And if the rules need to be changed, let them change. But it's predictable. Everyone's comfortable with the level of security we have. And let us see how far we can get. And Europe right now is the only market in the world that I'm aware of where that opportunity exists. So we have no interest in launching in India or South Africa or, which are arguably more profitable markets. The more fundamental opportunity and concern for us is launching a first world application in an environment that is regulated, that contributes to adoption and certainty of the new technology.
Yeah. And while answering this, you've mentioned about having trust in decentralized finance. So while companies taking blockchain and implementing it in their technologies is one part, the mental model of the users, how will we change it? It has been there since like centuries. And now suddenly we are asking them to use decentralized finance, for example. How can we build that trust in them? So I think this resonates with the previous question I asked. Do they even know about blockchain? But
let me tell you, history answers your question quite easily. You remember I told you in 1971 when Nixon removed the gold standard in the dollar, right? It was an experiment. They thought, well, maybe the dollar will collapse or something unintended will happen. And do you know what happened? People were just apathetic. The dollar just carried on as if nothing happened. And it's carrying on till this day. We've got a dollar that's backed and by nothing. And the only reason it happened is because people were apathetic. And here's the thing. People are apathetic today. It's actually up to us, the custodians of corporate governance, right, relating to the products we build, and to regulators to ensure that those safety nets are in place. Because I don't think adoption is a matter of trust. I don't think consumers have showed us over and over and over and over and over again that they would be happy to give up certain rights for a product that adds value to their lives. I mean, why do you think they click on the terms on their iTunes account and on Facebook and this, that, and the other? I mean, if you read that stuff, you would never accept it, But we do. We all do. So we kind of outsource the role of trust building to regulators, to government, and to other agencies, and to the stewards of technology themselves, like Facebook. So while it's a good philosophical question, I think practically and pragmatically that issue has been solved. It's what you've asked me now is basically a marketing question, and I mean on that, it's a function of how much money you throw into it to.
I was trying to put myself in a end user's shoe, and trying to imagine somebody asking me to use decentralized finance, and I'm like, why? I'll ask why. So that is where my question popped up from.
Right. But so the biggest opportunity is this. The biggest opportunity is peer-to-peer lending, right? Because I spend my money on Balenciaga shoes and you save every cent, 80% of your salary. Is there an opportunity for us to transact in a way that is profitable for you, but in a way that also mitigates your risk? And there are lots of DeFi type solutions out there that are trying to solve these questions. So whether it's Kaveer or whether it's some little, rice farmer that wants, cash flow, the thing that will turn him off is not the fact that he doesn't understand how this transaction is going to work. He's going to download the app and he's going to do his mobile payments, and in India and other markets around the world, it doesn't matter what your level of education is, everybody figure this thing out, right? But what's going to determine whether he uses this or not is whether the terms are favorable to him. So it's not a technology question, it's a value proposition question.
Yeah.
So no, I've got no concern about how smart the general public is about, DeFi, for the simple reason 90% of, maybe more, don't even understand what money is and how money works, yet we use it every day. So Yeah, I'm not terribly concerned about about these issues at the moment, I must be honest.
Yeah, those are amazing, valuable insights. And before we end, do you have any other sound bites to share with our audience?
Yeah. When I look at new technologies, so these fourth industrial revolution technologies like blockchain, robotic process automation, artificial intelligence, it's really disappointed me over the last few years working in this field how developers and companies have come to embrace these technologies. Their approach to adopting these technologies are very insular. Let me give you an example. We see incredible RPA, robotic process automations, right, that have saved companies a ton of money. We've seen blockchain save a ton of money. For example, Walmart had this, empty shelves problem for decades. Developing a logistics system over blockchain has addressed that overnight. And we see companies make incredible strides using these technologies. The one thing that I'm not seeing is companies using these technologies to solve people problems, like the ones we spoke about, poverty and healthcare. And I mean, the best example of that are chatbots, because, I mean, obviously, our technology is fundamentally a chatbot. And if I spoke to 1,000 people and I said, hey, how many of you speak with your bank's chatbot on a regular basis? There'll be nobody. I'm going to tell you exactly why this is. Because when that chatbot is developed, the AI model, the artificial intelligence model, is built around the bank's need, the bank's requirement to deflect queries away from human agents to save a bit of money, right? When actually, the customer doesn't care about that. So what do we need? We need to build an AI model around the customer need. Because every time you train these models through iteration, that model becomes more and more and more biased towards the need it was created for. So if it is an internal company process need, your AI is going to become more and more effective in that vein. But is that really the big opportunity here? Is that really the big problem? Or is the big problem here where 20% of your lending book are customers who are delinquent? That's the more fundamental problem. The more fundamental problem for a healthcare insurer is helping a person with diabetes or obesity or metabolic syndrome to take his medication on time, to count his calories, and to do his steps and be physically active, right? And the only way we can do that is by engaging that guy every single day. So there's a huge opportunity for AI to fundamentally change, the value proposition of the provider to the customer. We're not seeing any of this, or very little of this, because the priority now, and all the money going, the investment money going out, is into these internal business problems. Even when I speak to venture capital funds, they're not really interested in the problem, they're interested in the kind of cash flow that my solution is going to generate. So I do think there's a fundamental missed opportunity in looking at this side of the equation and forgetting the customer, who should actually be in the middle of everything we try to achieve. I mean, we're there to serve them ultimately. The banks are also there to serve. So why are we building technology to serve you? For me, it doesn't make sense. But I speak with people around the world and investors around the world and developers. They all focus their attention on the guy that's going to make money for them, which is the bank or the lender, etc. Change that. So I want to talk to entrepreneurs and tell them, focus on the problem. You solve these problems that have plagued us for decades, the money's going to come. But stop building and prioritizing those guys, the companies. Focus on the genuine.
Yeah. So you're saying the solution has to be customer-centric?
Customer centricity, absolutely. Can I just give you another quick example, right? So around the world, every financial provider in the world talks about financial wellness, right? We do this for financial wellness, do that for financial wellness. We're all about financial wellness, wellness. Fantastic. Financial wellness for the customer only happens up until the point he misses his payment, whether it's an insurance, or a credit card payment or whatever. And then after that, screw you, there's no financial wellness for you because I'm going to get my money from you and then I'm going to hand you over to a debt collector. And the debt collector is only going to have a 20% chance of getting that money in any event. And you are going to be blacklisted and that's going to just spiral you down into poverty, right? So, so financial wellness in the world today exists up until the point when you're actually in trouble and need financial wellness, right?
Oh, God. Yes.
Because there's no financial wellness on this side of the circle. There's only misery and debt collection. And I think it's insane. How is it we only give financial wellness to people who can afford it? Shouldn't we be democratizing access to everybody? Right?
Yeah.
And again, it goes back to what social problems are your technologies trying to solve? So here, this part here where everything's okay, all the fintech money is going into this side of the equation. How do we get more money? How do we solve the thin books problem? How do we make more money? It's never about right. Kaveer just lost his job. How can we help him and how can we save him as a customer? Because it does make commercial sense to do so. We've realized it's just too difficult a problem and that's it. It's gone. And I can go into actual numbers and it will actually blow your mind when you understand how big these problems are and what a big opportunity it is for us to be solving these problems. But it's contrarian thinking to where the tech market is kind of right now.
Yeah. But those were some beautiful examples you gave, and I hope this message reaches out to all the companies out there and all the entrepreneurs that are trying to solve problems. So thank you so much for joining us today, Kaveer. Thank you so much.
It's an absolute pleasure, Nimalika. I enjoyed this very much.
Enjoy
your weekend.
Yeah, sure. You too.
Bravo. Ciao. Bye.
For more content, subscribe to Engati and tap the bell icon to get exclusive content from thought leaders from around the globe. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you with a new expert soon.